Ambassador Jbogar, thank you for being with us at the newscast of Sitel.
Always a pleasure.
We received today the 10th recommendation for starting the negotiations with the European Union. This year it is unconditional. Can we expect that finally the country will start the negotiations with the European Union?
It's right, it's the 10th recommendation, but it's a different one. It's not only recommendation, it's not only the country report, it also attaches the conditions that member states put forward last June. Last June, member states decided that they will open negotiations this June under the conditions, and they put 4 conditions that the country continues reforms. In this report, we are saying that all those 4 conditions have been met. All those reforms have been implemented. So it's much stronger recommendation because it follows conclusions of the ministers of last year where they already said that they will open negotiations this June. Mm-hmm. So we have to be optimistic and we have to believe that this will happen. Of course, it's a decision of the member states. Commission is very clear. Commissioner Hahn and High Representative Mogherini today were very clear. The country is ready. The country is ready now to open negotiations. Of course, decision will be with the member states, but member states usually base their decision on the report by the Commission.
Mm-hmm. Even though, as you said, the report says that there is progress in all areas, it's a very positive report on the country's progress, France still said that it hasn't made a decision whether they will support a decision to give a date and start the negotiations with our country. What do you think their stance will be in June?
I think all member states were waiting for this report. Of course, there is a large number of countries who are supporting the opening, who have been supporting the opening of negotiations for quite some long time, but there are some more sensitive or critical member states who are waiting for this report, and that's why like France and also Netherlands and maybe some others didn't want to take a position. They waited for the report. Now the report is here and the report is very clear, so we hope that that will help them make a decision.
Is it possible to postpone it? And don't you think that, again, a postponing of the decision to give a date for starting the negotiation will damage the credibility of the European Union and might also backslide the reform process in the country?
I think High Representative Mogherini spoke about that today. I think she was very clear of the importance that commitments that the European Union made to the countries of the Western Balkans are followed up if the countries deliver what they're supposed to deliver. And, speaking about North Macedonia, we really have to recognize the big changes that were made. I just said at the meeting with the leaders, it's the only country in the region where you could have a meeting like we had today with the President Pendarovsky, and all political leaders, all political parties, all stakeholders were present around the table discussing about the future of the country. That's very unique in the region. It's very unique in the region that you have opposition in the parliament, discussing with the government the laws, voting for the laws that need 2/3 majority for the reform processes. That's also very unique. And it's very unique that you don't have problems with any of the neighboring countries. So I think this is all presented in the report. And North Macedonia really stands out as the country that, after so many years of waiting, I think now it's time to move forward.
Why is giving a date and starting the negotiations so critical when even today High Representative Federica Mogherini said that it will take years to end that process of negotiations? So for our country it would be wind at our backs and it won't be any risk for the European Union to do that.
It has to do with the feelings among the citizens of the European Union. And the citizens of the European Union for the past few years are not so forthcoming, not so supporting of further enlargement. Because of the first financial crisis, then migration crisis, with terrorism that was helping the European Union, a lot of citizens were led to believe that the security is endangered of the European Union and that only national states should protect them and that they should protect from outside. That's why you have this wave of populist movements in the European Union, against migration, but also against further enlargement. And because of that mood among the citizens, leaders are much more careful what they, how fast they move on enlargement. But you're right, and I agree that this is the start of the process, which will be very important for the country, because the road toward the membership is as important as the membership itself, because on that road the country will change. People will start seeing the change, and it will change the whole atmosphere in the country. So I agree that it's really important that we start this. But the problem is with the atmosphere that we have at the moment in some of the member states.
Corruption, judicial reforms, public administration and economy were some of the fields, some of the sectors where the report points out that the reforms are not still at the required level by the European Union, and there is much more to be done in these areas. Although there is some efforts and some progress in these areas, there is much more to be done. Is the EU going to set a new list of reform priorities, or and do you think that the government has the capacity to really implement the reforms that the European Union is asking for?
Well, a lot of good progress was done, and I think we recognize a lot of progress that was done in all these areas. On the most sensitive is, of course, the rule of law area with the judiciary, fighting corruption. Their government has limited powers, let's say. You can adjust legislation, which has been done, and legislation is now all in place, taking on board all recommendations from Venice Commission, from Pribe report. But the real change has to come within the judiciary itself. And we are seeing some change, but I think more will be needed. So once we start negotiations, I don't think we'll come with new action plans or requirements, but negotiations itself will have certain benchmarks, as we call them. When we start negotiations, we always start with chapters 23, 24, which is judiciary, rule of law, the most sensitive areas. And for those, we put forward benchmarks to open, benchmarks to close. We monitor very closely. I think people will appreciate when we open those chapters, because then hopefully we will see changes in judiciary faster than we are seeing them today.
You had the European elections recently. Greece also had local elections. And after those two election processes in our neighboring country, Greece, it is clear that probably the next government will be led by the current leader of Nea Demokratia, Mitsotakis, who has said many times that he will use all opportunities and arguments to block Macedonia's negotiations process with the European Union. Do you think that this is political marketing, PR, or is it a real threat to the Prespa agreement and to the process of integration of our country?
Well, for the time being, I think we'll have to, we still have a government, the current government in Greece, who is a big friend of the country, who is a big supporter of the country, also in Brussels. I think they have been very helpful and will continue to be very helpful in getting the date to open negotiations. Prespa agreement has been ratified on both sides and is valid document which will remain in place. Its implementation is linked to opening and closing negotiations. So I believe it's in Greek interest as well that that you open and close negotiations, because certain deadlines for changes are linked to European chapters, to European negotiations. So I think it's in mutual interest that you open negotiations and you go along the way.
Ambassador Žbogar, thank you for being here with us today on the day of publishing the report on the progress. I hope to see you again in June when we get a certain date for starting the negotiations.
I really hope so. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.